Very good evening. So I'm very glad you've had the chance to be here this evening and participate in this satsang. It is important to make it clear what satsang is all about. To understand what it is that we are participating in. So, first of all, satsang is not a teaching. It is not a how-to. We don't sit with notebooks and write down instructions unless we want to capture in a written form some of the insights. Perhaps the results of our own self-reflection. Because the most important thing that takes place in satsang is less the words said and much more the insight that we gain into our own being, the truth, the reality that we find within, sometimes not just some marvelous reality, sometimes actually a painful reality or a limited reality or seeing an illusion inside us. And that is actually very often not less important than the moments of revelation, not less magnificent. It is important to see the reality within our being, the reality of our thoughts, the reality of our emotions, the reality of our relationships. Otherwise, it is all just wonderful experiences, but wonderful experiences are not enough. We need to see and eliminate the illusion, our mistakes, correct our errors. If we do that, we begin to gain maturity. So in satsang, there is no actual teaching. There is more meditation. We meditate together and we reflect together. And we allow space for a broader realization. A realization of something that usually escapes our attention. That usually, because of our mundane concerns, our trivial occupation, we tend to overlook. And the thing is, that is what is so extraordinary about life, that the most important things about life are completely overlooked in our mundane concerns. Thoughts cannot capture well, they cannot capture these important realities. Therefore, we require something other than thought. And this is why we have satsang. In satsang, we do not care about the one who speaks. It is not the focus of our attention. It is not very interesting whether the one who speaks is in any way special, different. It is really our own encounter with our life, our relationships, our thoughts, our emotions, and much, much deeper than that. So we gather here for satsang every month, and during the month I usually teach many different types of teachings. The teachings they perhaps contain instructions, perhaps they delineate a path of transformation, they provide us with tools. But when we meet here in this specific encounter, we turn to something that is much more intimate. And much more immediate. Much of what we share is non-verbal. It is not in the words, it is more in the meeting itself, in the gaps between the words, between sentences. So that is a rare opportunity which I greatly cherish. Satsang is the closest thing that I know that the event that is the closest to something sacred. So let us now start with some guided meditation. Of course, the entire talk is going to be a meditation, but we will first be introduced to the subject, to the topic of this evening through a guided meditation. Perhaps some of you already know it because I've taught it in the context of the tantric Buddhist practices of the inner fire meditation. But here we are going to experience it in a very, very particular context. It will actually, the meditation contains everything that we are going to talk about this evening. So it's always important to feel it first before we theorize. So let us now close our eyes, the meditation is called the empty body meditation. It is usually traditionally in highest yoga tantra practices, it is considered to be a sort of a warm-up, a preparation. But here we will, a preparation for inner fire, but here we will delve into it as a central meditation. So we can now close our eyes and we'll start with being aware. Perhaps first we can take one deep breath. Then breathe slowly and deeply, letting our body relax with every breath we take. So we'll start by being aware of our physical body, just as it is right now, that as it is felt substantially material, dense. It is the body of flesh and bone and blood. Perhaps it even has some stagnation here and there that makes it feel even more physical, more material, more dense. So now we can do the following either gradually or instantly and fully. We will visualize, imagine how this substantially physical body melts into light. This can happen one body part after another, or fully. Physical body melts into light and dissolves into emptiness. So that now all that remains is the outline of the body, just like an empty shell. If you look into the body, you will realize that it is now made of air or light, just like a balloon that is filled with air, while it seems from the outside as if it is full of something. Keep this vision of space like crystal clear body in which there is absolutely no physical resistance. The skin that outlines the body is itself transparent, but also glowing. The entire experience of the body is like a rainbow in the sky. It is existent, non-existent at the same time. Feel how it is as clear as a crystal. Remain for a moment in this state of radiance, that covers nothing more than space, air, light. If there are some physical congestions or blockages, this meditation can resolve them by allowing the life force to flow freely, since now there is no clinging to the image of the body as physical. So slowly you can come out of the meditation, although of course you can keep this sense of empty body even when you open your eyes. You can of course remain in closed eyes in satsang, it doesn't matter. So this meditation, this practice is actually echoed in the major text of what is called the Mahamudra, in a text called the Ganges Mahamudra. Tilopa, who transmits the knowledge of Mahamudra, the final realization, to his student, tells him the following sentence. He says, body has no essence like a plantain tree. Body has no essence like a plantain tree. Body has no essence, which means that the body is the reality of the body. If you look inside, deep inside, you realize that it is empty. Therefore, it is like a plantain tree. Empty means that it is not, it has no solidity, no substance. And he compares it, he likens it to a plantain tree. A plantain tree is a tree that really has no trunk. It looks as if it has a trunk, as if it has a core, but actually it is just leaves that are wrapped around, creating an illusion, an appearance of a trunk. You can also compare it to a bamboo that within it is hollow. It looks as if it is substantial, but inside there is just nothing. Now, what is this something that is the trunk of the body? What does Tilopa mean here when he says body has no essence? Body has no essence. What is the essence of the body? The essence is the self. The self is like the trunk, the experience that there is something that around which the entire body complex revolves. That the body refers to a certain essence, a certain center. But Tilopa says, look deep into the body and you find there no essence, no core, which means no self. Because as we are going to explore this evening, self is center, self is core. So if you meditate so simply and so easily, you quickly can get into this vision that of a body that was just a moment ago was completely dense and material and physical, but really in this meditation is revealed as space-like. Air. So we say that the trunk is this notion of self, notion of the self. And this is what we are going to discuss now. Because there is an important distinction that we must make. And if we don't make it in our spiritual journey, if we are not perceptive enough about this could be a great trap. Especially because we live nowadays in a certain culture, in a certain environment that deeply encourages this kind of thought. And this is the thought of the self, the individual self, the sanctity, the centeredness of the self. And we probably the terms that are most alluring to this illusion are terms like self-empowerment, self-fulfillment, self-improvement, self-acceptance, self-expression, right? Or sometimes we speak of the true self or the higher self. So there is much going on about my self-expression, the importance of my self-expression, the importance of my self-improvement, the conflict I'm dealing with loving myself. All these issues, they busy many of us sometimes for 20, 30, 40 years. And they are really great, all these terms, except for one problem, that they are completely unreal. that is the only problem with this. The thing is that we, in our current environment, we tend to make create some kind of a blend, a mixture of different levels of insight. For instance, we borrow some terms from psychology and we mix them with some terms from spirituality, from the world of transformation, and we get some kind of a strange and mixed process in which it is not so clear where it is an actual transformative spiritual process and therapeutic process. You see, wanting to reach a state of self-love is not like transformation. It can be completely valid again, except it's not real, but that is a different problem, right? So, and we will talk about it. So when it comes to transformation, actually all these terms, all these combinations of self-improvement, self-expression, self-love, self-empowerment, it creates a mix of transformation and a dualistic psychological language and approach. So we listen to transformative talks, for instance, to Satsang, because Satsang is all about transformation, it's all about liberation, but it's somehow on our journey, it still becomes completely mixed, the values or the destinations. It seems as if it is the same thing, but it is really not. Whatever is the case, this is because nowadays the big project of everyone is the project of the self, the project of the individual self. Empowering myself, loving myself, improving myself, expressing myself. Now you can say with some truth that even I give teachings of self-acceptance, for instance. Then we are right to ask, then why are you saying that right now? If these two have no connection, why do you still talk about it? And this is something that we need to understand, and that is that in any path, including my own, there are two stages or processes. For instance, in the highest yoga tantra, there are two stages. One is called the evolutionary or generation stage, and the other one is the highest or completion stage. And it is considered that when you move to the completion stage, the previous stage, the evolutionary stage, looks like a dream compared to the practices and the approach of the completion stage. So self-acceptance and self-improvement and self-empowerment, they can be relevant, for instance, because they, first of all, they help to create some bridge between the absolute reality, absolute truth, absolute liberation, and our current stage of that includes needs for therapy, that includes personal confusions, and definitely the fact that we belong to a certain environment, so we come from this terminology. This is how we at first can begin to grasp these ideas. Also, this type of lower stage is, and lower not in the sense that it is something to belittle, but it is lower compared to the approach that is closer to reality. So in this lower stage, we also acquire tools, and tools that are actually helpful for the rest of our life. For instance, certain meditations, certain breathing practices, certain ways of treating the body, of treating our emotions. And it is also, the lower stage is a very important preparation for the higher stage. This prepares the ground, makes us capable of letting the deeper insight in. So all this is highly important, and we do develop through these lower type of practices. Even now, for instance, if you listen to this talk, some of it we cannot completely absorb or let in because our current filters remove or do not necessarily grasp everything, but only are capable to let in whatever is required or relevant right now. Therefore, we anyway take in according to our present understanding or present interest. But what is important, and this is why there is satsang, is that the path, no matter if it is right now in the lower stage or the higher stage, the path should always take place, should always occur in light of the absolute truth. We always need to remember, even if we are, I don't know, struggling right now with a process of self-love, we shouldn't necessarily stop it or say, okay, this is, now I heard that this is an illusion, I'm not going to deal with it. Perhaps we cannot even say that this is an illusion. That would be just a mental trick, right? So, but the thing is that we must always remember, and the absolute truth, which is the light that always illuminates our way, the light toward which we are moving, growing. And anyway, even if we are right now struggling with some issues of self-love or self-improvement or self-expression, it doesn't mean that we cannot get a glimpse right now into absolute reality. In our understanding, we should be very careful not to mix these two. If we're interested in the complete reality. in liberation, in the highest understanding. And why is this so important? Again, as we just said before, this is because this is not an illusion, this is the illusion. This is the dream. And if we give reality, deep reality to these processes of self-improvement, self-acceptance, you got it, I think, all this self-something. What happens is that we only fortify it and we make the self more solid, more and more solid, at least look more and more solid, and therefore more and more separate. Do you understand? The more we deal with self-something, self-process, we eventually, it becomes not only solid, but it makes us so distinct, so apart, which perhaps completely contradicts our hope to one day know this absolute love, absolute reality. So please take a look at it together with me here. If I give a lot of reality to these terms and processes, this entraps me. First of all, it creates a sort of a split, an inner split, inner conflict within me, right? Within my being, because there is self-acceptance, which means that it's a process of I accept myself or I don't accept myself. There is a break within me. Then there is also a comparison, because the very idea of that hides behind these terms and processes is the idea of an ideal, something that is better toward which I am constantly progressing, right? Self-improvement or self-empowerment. I'm becoming more and more powerful. Or self-acceptance. I learn to accept myself. Self-expression means that there is some kind of an ideal that I hold inside my mind of myself in full self-expression. And myself in full self-love. This, of course, also means that there is a future, right? It's a constant future. There is a sense of moving toward the future where one day the self that I am right now and the self that I should be will merge, will become one and the same. So there is the sense of future and there is the sense of continuity. I am progressing, past, present, future, past, present, future. There is a steady movement. I am doing better and better with every day. So there is the inner conflict, and then there is constant comparison with the ideal, and there is the future sense, and the sense of continuity, and actually a suffocating separation. I become more and more myself, perhaps, but is that what is going to make me truly happy, truly fulfilled? That is probably where the illusion is so active, because it tells me yes, while the reality is a constant no. Because it never gives that, never. Not what the heart longs for. So the thing is that above all, this illusion prevents me from seeing into reality, from looking into the reality of my own, of my mind, the reality of the mind. I'm so busy with self and self and self and self. And there is this kind of endless project that is future-based, future-dependent. And all this busyness keeps me distracted. It prevents me from really taking a sincere look into the mind. Because what is self? And here is the thing. Self is center. It's the thinking that there is some center in the mind. Some me that the mind is centered on, then everything refers to, which means, just like Tilopa said, there is the illusion that there is a trunk, a solid trunk inside the mind, right? But this is the thing, just like with the body, look into the trunk of the mind and you will realize that the mind has no essence. It doesn't have a center. You know, there is the term being self-centered, but really self and center, they are synonyms. As if the king of the mind is the I. Now, the thing is that we all know deep down that there is no such a thing as self. And that's actually our biggest problem, because we try very hard to cover this reality up. And why do we try so hard to cover this reality? This is because we are afraid of emptiness. We are afraid of the emptiness of our own being. We are afraid of looking silently into the mind and realizing that it absolutely contains no reality of self. And we need to understand that without fear, this would be the easiest thing to realize. There is nothing easier than that. It's empty. The mind is empty. The body is empty. So what is this self? How come we have this kind of conviction, as if it is something so obvious that must have a solid existence? If you look really deeply into this self-thought, because it is only a thought, it is only an image, you will realize that the self is only the sum total of all identities, of all its identities, which means identities are the mine. What is mine? My relationship, my country, my life, my body, my thoughts, my emotions, my memories. So gather all these my and mine, all these identities, identifications, and you will get a sort of a cluster. And this cluster pretends to be a self, a me. The thing is that there is no I possessing all these mine. If you remove all these mine, my and mine, where is this I, you see? Where is it? It is just made of these identities. And it's sometimes unbelievable to see how people cling so desperately to their mine and my, and create from this sense of solid self. People in this world, they would kill and die for my nation, my relationship, my belief, my ideology, my religion, my opinion. They retell memories again and again and again. So they become a sort of a continuity that gives, that fortifies, strengthens this cluster. So remove all your relationships, all your attachments, what you do in life, who you converse with, your environment, and so on and so on. And what is left? So the self is only an image in the mind. An image, it's a picture. Can you grab it? Can you hold it? Can you find it somewhere in the body? This eye, the more you try to catch it, the more it escapes. It is so elusive, and still, for some reason, it manages our entire life. It manages everything. It is the center of what our mind is busy with. Just because there is this fear of emptiness. So really there is no one to improve or to love or to accept or to express. This doesn't mean that there are no processes in life. Of course there are processes. There are challenges, and there is a resolution of the challenge, and there are skills, and the skills can be fulfilled. Creativity can take place. Communication can take place. But why does it have to have a self? It is actually just processes, and behind these processes there is no center, no self. Life itself does not have a center, you see. There are birds, and there are trees, and there are sky, and earth, and there are clouds, and there are people, and there are actions. But from the beginning of time, there has been no self, no center. Life is a movement without a center. It's a river. So how does self exist? It exists only in relation to something else. It is only relative. Once there was somebody who looked at his or her pet and told me that, I would say they, to just minimize any individual reference. So they told me that they're practicing constantly looking at this pet, this beloved pet, and thinking this pet is once going to die. I must be prepared for this death. I must not develop attachment because I must be prepared for letting go, for non-attachment. And I said, yeah, no, this is actually not the problem. The problem is not the fact that the other is going to die. What we are not facing is the fact that we are going to die, you see. We are not, because if we keep trying to let go of our attachments, we forget that our greatest attachment, the greatest sense of continuity. Because you can, yes, your pet can die, your house can be burned, and I hope not. Your things can happen. People can die around you, and so on and so on. But this again happens to the self. You see, so the self lets go, and the self accepts, and the self embraces reality, and so on and so on. But the self itself remains steady, constant, as if it has its own solid existence. So the thing is our own emptiness, is the emptiness of the mind, the emptiness of the body. Realizing that it is not solid. For example, we create a certain ideal, like how we will be in a time of perfect self-expression. And then we compare ourselves. And this comparison between the reality and the image, this is the source of the experience of self. Self always exists in relative to something else. But it doesn't have, if you look at it, it will immediately escape you because it doesn't want you to see that it's only made of thought. So try to see if you can dare and realize this inherent emptiness behind this game of thought, game of images. And realize that if there is a renunciation, this is the only real renunciation. It's not renunciation, is not to be a sadhu, a monk, or something like that. Renunciation is asking myself, what would happen if my memories are taken away from me, if my career is taken away from me, my religion, my family, my spiritual concepts, my philosophy of life, all the things that I collect, that I've collected along the way, and that have become the cluster around my so-called solid existence. And there it is. I realized that there is no trunk. Just like the empty body meditation. Just like what Tilopa said. Body has no essence. Now, of course, what at the beginning reacts in us is fear, because this type of thought that is so used to continuity, to past, present, future, to the noise of identity, it is so terrified. That is why it is also terrified of death, you see. That is why death seems so either something that it doesn't want to face at all, or it fears terribly. But when you move beyond the fear, you realize that something extraordinary is taking place. First of all, this is what you can call the beginning of the end of the journey. The journey. When we say the journey, it's again, it makes it sound as if there is such a journey, you see. Really journey of self-acceptance and self-improvement and self anything, and that we were marching with all our might toward on a journey of evolution. We were evolving in time, in space, becoming, but then all of this becomes silenced, you see. All of this comes to a halt. You realize that this endless generator of time and evolution and progress and improvement doesn't need to be taken care of, it doesn't need to be improved, it doesn't need to be loved, because for the simple reason that it's not there. And that's a tremendous sense of liberation if you really allow it. And at that moment you realized that the journey of the self was, to a certain degree, it has never really happened. It was like a dream. So then there is some inner confirmation that arises that the journey is over, not because it has ever really happened, but the illusion, the thought that was moving you and pushing you and creating a conflict in you, and constant comparison and constant future, this thought is over. That's liberation. And we realize that at this moment, that there is no fulfillment, actually. There is no type of self-fulfillment that could ever lead us to this state, which was actually what all forms of self-fulfillment and all forms of self-improvement, all forms of self-perfecting are longing for, you see? Everything is trying to reach this state, this inner completeness, this sense of totality, of being at home, of the end of the tension, the existential tension, and suddenly you realize that they could never lead you to that. They could only lead you away from that, no matter how wonderful they are. This is perhaps the greatest irony of life. There is happiness only in this state of no self. So all the project of happiness that nowadays is feeding countless bestsellers and countless seminars and I don't know, startups. It's really not there because self-fulfillment and self-expression, if anything, they only lead you to anxiety. So now if you really allow this emptiness and you have direct access to it through the empty body, right? Because you realize through the empty body meditation that it's so easy to just sit and in a moment to have no substance, no physical substance. Suddenly the body has no essence. And remember, what makes the body solid and heavy and physical is the sense of self. Not really the physical organs. So, if we allow this emptiness, this emptiness of body, this emptiness of mind, at a certain point, the outlines that separate the mind and separate the body from everything, they become really transparent. They become redundant, actually, because how is this space distinct from everything else? And that's the moment when this state of no self, no center, leads to an absorption in the totality of existence, in the totality of life. Perhaps you cannot understand every word here. It doesn't matter. Just try to feel into it, to allow other parts of your being to communicate with it. Understand this point. If the mind has no center, it also doesn't have an edge. you see, because center and edge, they come together. And this is where this emptiness is like a river that flows into the ocean. It is the mind becomes infinite and your body becomes infinite. Sometimes it becomes so ridiculous, this our illusion of self, that we there is deep silence, there is profound silence, profound emptiness, but then the self makes it an experience. You see, the self says, I experienced great silence, or I experienced great emptiness. You see, it makes it, everything becomes mine. But the truth is that the I cannot contain this emptiness, this silence. So this is the key. And we should remember that with all the environment that supports, that values so greatly self-expression and self-fulfillment, it's an era of self-fulfillment and self-expression and being the best version of yourself and all that. We shouldn't forget what it's really all about in terms of truth, in terms of reality. Because reality can be known, truth can be known only in the total absence of self, you see. When there is absolutely no self, there is no interference, no center experiencing, no person, no image in the mind, no time, no progress, then and only then can the reality that the heart so longs for can be known, can be revealed. Good. I think we are exploring an important point. So let's see if there are questions. I can see that there is a question here by, do I pronounce it well, Jochen?
Yes.
Yes? Hello. So let's see, and of course you can send written questions, and I will do my best to answer them within the time frame that I have. So hello. Thank you so much for the last satsang, which I happily enjoyed. It inspired me and resonated with me, and what you said and transmitted was of great value to me. I felt lifted and energized by this satsang, and very energized by directing the attention to attention itself, as you guided us to do. It got clear for me that the source of energy is already there inside us, so to speak. But my elevation came to sudden end when the next day I had to work again and got in contact with other people. My job is to counsel people with personal and family problems. It felt like all the energy suddenly went down and away, and as if I lost my center, and hearing all these problems burdened me and pulled me down. So my question, how can I sustain a high level of energy and connectedness with this center of energy itself, in myself, and not lose the energy and focus in contact with other people and the world? How to stay connected with myself, with the energy, and with the life around me? Second question, although I am longing for stillness, I often find myself automatically avoiding to become still and distracting myself, like running away from myself and from deeper layers of aloneness and fear. Can you give me a hint how to stop this pattern of avoiding and facing this, what is waiting me inside? Okay, perhaps, who knows, some you have had already some reflections throughout this satsang, but let's see. So you're describing a situation in which in the satsang, you felt highly energized, and it lasted until you started engaging with people and with their problems. Obviously, their frequency influenced you to a degree that eventually you felt that you could no longer hold this frequency, and you are overcome by this situation. Now, it's very important to understand that truth or reality is not a certain state. It is not a special state, you see, because perhaps right now, because all of our energy is concentrated, perhaps we're feeling certain vibrations, certain energies. There is intensity in the air. Perhaps if we're listening some electricity, some heightened awareness, and this brings us to some forms of experience. And these experiences, that they may be very special and very and feel real and profound, and therefore we want to keep being in this state. But it is very important to understand that we are not talking here about being in a certain special state, but with awareness itself. The question is how aware we are, and how aware we are is not a special state, but the way we notice even the way our thought now wants to be in a special state. Suddenly it has a past image, a past experience, and it compares and it says, now I want to be in that state. I want to be energized. Now I need to listen to this frequency. So then there is a comparison. Then I think that truth is a special frequency. And then it separates me even more. While I could, in the very same way, if there was sufficient awareness, perhaps I could realize through the emptiness, the awareness that I am the person that is talking to me. For instance, so the thing is that being aware of all the ways thought creates attachments and comparisons and images and past and future and craving, being so aware of that without reacting. And the more you are aware, the more you are energized, but not like in the special state of energy, you see. You are so aware. And this awareness is the state that is awareness of all the states, you see. Then it doesn't matter, because this awareness is the light, the sun that shines over everything, over all the different states. This is where your understanding begins to mature, because you're moving from thinking in terms of states, special states. You're moving to thinking in terms of awareness, the quality of awareness of all states. You understand that it's not a frequency, but it's the awareness of the different frequencies, and how we compare and how we divide, and how thought creates a yesterday, a satsang yesterday, and what happens when you let go of that. Suddenly you realize that you have become that energy. Okay, I answer this lengthily. Is there a question?
Yes.
Yes, please.
Amir is asking.
Yes.
Is there something like souls? Is there some kind of identity after dying, even if it's not called self? Can we be aware of emptiness after dying, like we can while being in a meditative state?
Okay, so the question is there souls? Now, perhaps there are souls. Does that mean that there is self? No. When we sometimes, because you use the term identities, which means that also after death there is an identity. But the thing is that if a realized being can right now have, let's say, a body, have a mind, and have a life and experiences and still without a self, right? So it's completely possible that there is an appearance, that there is an embodiment, that there is an existence, non-existence of something, and still there is absolutely no center, no self. So why would the soul be considered a self? Perhaps there are souls, perhaps souls take forms, but the soul is not an identity. The identity is formed only when awareness, the mind, becomes attached to a certain state, a certain condition, a certain appearance, and by saying mine creates an I, you see? That's an identity. There is no need for this process. So there are flowers and there are winds and there is lightning and there is thunder, and do they need a self? Does the sun have a self? It has definitely tremendous energy, right? It is so immensely powerful. It has more energy than maybe the entire humanity together. So if the sun, if there can be energy, there can be force in nature without the self, why does the soul why is it suddenly a self? Why is it an identity? Now the thing is that when you get rid of this illusion, you don't care so much what happens after death. It's because it is not really so important, you see, whether the appearance has a subtler level of appearance of existence, and that this will survive. It's not so important because you are life, you see, you are everything. You no longer limit your identity, and therefore it is not so important what will be the fate of one soul, if it survives, if it doesn't survive. Now, when you ask about awareness of death, my question to you is why not be aware now of death? You see, you can now be aware of death. You can now go through death. You don't need to wait for physical death. Physical death is just, you see, if we're not aware right now of death, being aware of death right now means finding out what it is, what is the state of mind when there are without any attachments, without any of our relationships, without our nationalities. You know, some people, they are so glued to their nationalities and to their religions that they're convinced that they will, I don't know, forever reincarnate as their as their religious identity or the national identity. It seems to them an eternal identity. What a waste of awareness. What a waste of the infinite energy of our mind. That it puts itself inside a small box of identity. and therefore never really dies, you see, even when it dies physically. Even perhaps if it persists after death, it never really dies. So we should ask ourselves, if we could die, if we listen to this satsang, we work together, we already know, we've tasted death, you see. And therefore we get our answer. Our answer is yes, awareness remains after death. Yes.
A question from Anna.
Yes, Anna.
The feeling of something dissolving, dying, or emptying itself has been present for some time now. How to move beyond the fear of emptiness?
Again, please, what is the beginning?
The feeling of something dissolving or dying or emptying itself has been present for some time now. How to move beyond the fear of emptiness?
How to move beyond. First of all, I'm happy to hear that there is already the starting of dissolving. I think there is one way. The best way to stop fearing the emptiness is that whenever there is emptiness, real emptiness, not the emptiness of thought, not thought-made emptiness, not some fabricated emptiness, not some manipulated emptiness, but real, authentic emptiness. Because the emptiness that thought creates is sterile, is really empty. It's not life, you see. Emptiness is life. It's filled with vibration. It's filled with energy. It's filled with a sense of something sacred, with openness, as if life opens without horizon. So infinitely, in all directions. And then when there is this kind of emptiness, there is also an immediate confirmation that this is real emptiness, because there is bliss. Now, bliss is not necessarily that you are dancing on the streets. Bliss can be extremely silent, and it's the feeling of complete resolution, of completeness, of being immersed in an ocean that has always been your home, you see, the home of your mind, the home of your body. And when there is this bliss, the bliss itself dissolves the fear of emptiness. Because how can you be now struggling with the fear of emptiness? We don't need to invent another struggle, because as soon as I say I want to dissolve the fear of emptiness, I'm already in conflict, right? Again, now I have another project of not fearing the emptiness. Identify what is afraid of the emptiness. What is afraid of the emptiness is only the illusion of thought. It's not the mind. It's not what you are. It's not your being that is afraid of emptiness. Actually, your being identifies it, recognizes emptiness. It is drawn to it. It loves it. It is the most natural state. So what experiences the fear, what is the fear, is that which has alienated itself, separated itself from this emptiness, and created this small box of personal life and identity. So realize this one is fear. There is no one who is afraid. Fear is the self, you see. So, and it's just a thought. So let it also steep in this silence until eventually it releases its resistance, because it is also made of the very same substance. It recognizes that this is its home. Even our so-called ego, the self, longs to return to that, you see. It's not really a fighter, it's just some kind of a wound of separation that has forgotten its own remedy. Yes.
A question from Thorsten.
Yes, Thorsten. Hello.
Thank you so much for this beautiful satsang. My question is simple. Is it enough to silence the mind? Greetings from Peru.
From Peru. That's just how non-local we are. But the mind is even less non-local, more local than that, than the internet, right? than Zoom. So the question is, again, how is it enough to silence the mind?
Yes.
First of all, I don't understand what is to silence the mind. Honestly, I'm not. This is not manipulation. I really am not sure, because the mind is already silent. You see, if there is anything that, I would revise your question and I would ask, is it enough to recognize that the mind is already silent? And then the answer is yes. Because is it enough to silence the mind? This entails an action. How to? It means that the mind is noisy. Don't believe this slight appearance of thought and emotion. It appears as if it is huge, because we give this appearance, we empower it to be self-existent, solidly existent, and it is not. It does not exist solidly or independently. It appears as wind that passes the ocean. You see, it is really nothing, and it is only empowered by the mind. Now, the most important thing is to take a deep, honest look into the nature of the mind, and to realize the mind is already empty. The mind already has no essence. The mind already doesn't have an edge. The mind is has always been silent, has always been unaffected. When you relax in this way into an already existing reality, you realize that even the little bit that you thought that you needed to invest, the little bit of energy that you needed to improve, to change, to alter the state of the mind, to make it, move it from an unenlightened mind to an enlightened mind, even this is not real, you see. The mind is enlightened. That is the thing. What is missing is only our awareness of the enlightened nature of the mind. So this is just how blissful it is. That you take a look deep into the mind and you see that it's just vast expanses of silence and emptiness without an edge. You look for the edge. Where does the mind end? Where are its limits? And you realize that you can't find the limits. You thought that the limits were the skull, the limits were the head, perhaps the body. But then you realize, no, the mind has no beginning, no end. It is unborn. That's when you realize that every movement that you would try to you attempt to make, every struggle that we're creating in toward the truth, it takes us in exactly the opposite direction. It is more like immersing in rather than moving toward. Or shifting between states. Good. So let us just close our eyes for a moment just so we can say goodbye with the awareness of all that has been explored. With the awareness of the nature of the mind, the nature of the body. The awareness of how emptiness and bliss are complementary halves in this realization. I thank you so much for this sharing. Good night.